Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Intleacht. My name is David Mullen. I'm a CitA director and I'm founder of Intleacht BIM Specialists. And it's a pleasure today to chair the session today as part of the Intleacht 2026 series. The Intleacht series is a six-part programme. It's designed to support the responsible and practical adoption of artificial intelligence across the construction and built environment sectors. And this is the fourth of the series. The focus here shifts from the design and planning to the delivery stages, and it examines how AI can support construction sites through enhanced safety, quality assurance, and objective progress insights. So, before we go on too much further, I'd like to take a moment to thank all of our sponsors, without whom the series wouldn't be possible. And there on the screen, BAM, Cosmos, MTI, AKM Design Group, John Paul Construction, Punch Consultant Engineers, and Evercam. And I would also like to thank our collaborators. This is a great collaboration between a number of professional bodies in Ireland, and it's great to be able to open this up to a wider audience, both in terms of the speakers and the breadth of presentation that we have available, but also to be able to reach a much wider audience. So thank you very much to our collaborators. This afternoon, we have four great speakers for you. Firstly, we have Vinny and Ez from Evercam, and they're going to look at reality-driven intelligence and the move towards actually maximizing the use of this on-site data and turning unstructured visual data into a decision-making tool. And then, following this, we have Jenna Farrell and Mark Keogh, and they're going to show us how recording and capturing of unstructured data can use AI to present this back as real evidence of what happens on a site and how this can be used to assist contractors. So just in terms of the running order, we'll have the two presentations first, and then afterwards there'll be a Q&A option open during the presentations that you can put in your questions for any of the presenters. And we'll leave this to the end when we have a wee bit of a chat and a wrap up. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Vinny first from Evercam to introduce his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you, Sinead, Engineers Ireland. Thanks all at CitA. Vinny Quinn is my name. I'm one of the co-founders here and Managing Director Ireland for Evercam, Reality-Driven Intelligence. I'm going to be very brief, and I'm mainly going to introduce our VP of Product, Ez, who's going to give the presentation. Lots of you will have encountered Evercam over the years, originally as construction cameras, where we were very much about capturing visual data from fixed position cameras and providing that to the decision makers on site. That changed as we started adding other sources of data, such as drones and 360 cameras, and giving additional data points. Changed again as we started being able to use computer vision to capture what was happening on site and turn that into decision-making data. And AI has changed the game again, where now it's not just about capturing data and turning it into kind of reactive decision-making. We all know that human behavior changes when it's observed, when it's communicated that it's being observed. What Ez is going to show you now is the next generation of where we are driving this to be about just decision-making, future planning, confirming that what is supposed to be being done on a site is being done, and collating data from various reality capture sources into that, into all of the decision-making platforms involved. So I will hand over to Ez, our VP of Product, who will take it away.
Thank you very much, Vinny. And thank you to Engineers Ireland and CitA for the opportunity. Very exciting. We have a very interesting topic, an exciting one to talk about. I trust you can now see my screen. And yeah, the talk is about the shift from visibility on construction sites to reality-driven intelligence. And we'll be walking through this shift and then talking about and looking at practical examples of what this means and what this looks like. So to start, we have to go through a little bit of a background on what that means, what is exactly happening. So we'll have to go a little further back. So this is like around 25 years ago when technology started, affecting construction and the construction industry. We all remember the first instance of this was design applications and design tools. So companies like Autodesk led that direction to bring tools like, AutoCAD to allow us to, create design or computer-enabled designs for construction sites. This was a big revolution. It led to a lot more collaboration, and it birthed a new category, which is construction technology. About 10 years later, there was another shift happening in the industry, which is the shift from just design and planning to management tools that you see on site today, like Procore and applications. And we started seeing people, with tablets on construction sites looking at drawings and plans. And then about 5 years ago, this started to become a topic, which is reality capture. This was the new shift, and we started seeing a lot more tools aimed and geared towards capturing what's happening on site. Now, the situation today looks a little more like this, where we have things like fixed cameras, drone imagery, 360 walks, laser scanning, LiDAR, wearables and sensors, to track workers and their health and productivity. We have weather stations, we have, access tools, sensors, all kinds of technologies available on site today that allow us to capture what is happening on site. And everybody has since then been talking about visibility and transparency and seeing what's actually happening on a construction site as the goal. And what we're going to be arguing today is that visibility is not the finish line. Visibility is just the start and the beginning. The situation today looks more like this, where we have a surplus in visibility. We see so much that is happening on site, but unfortunately, there is a control deficit. What that means is right on this next slide. There's more visibility. We have cameras, dashboards, photos, reports, a lot of information coming from the site. We're capturing the reality, but still, that is not necessarily affecting how we make decisions all the time. A lot of this information is retroactive. It comes after the fact. And this is a complaint or a discussion that we have with a lot of people on site, that we've been having this discussion for the past 5 years. That, yeah, you're capturing that information, great, but it's happening after it happened. What am I going to do with it? And this is, you must take the people on the site seriously when they raise stuff like that. Because what is happening right now is we have better archives of things that may have gone wrong. Right? Visibility without actual control in site is just a better archive of what went wrong, but it doesn't necessarily affect it or lead to better practices on site. Okay, so we're gonna walk through this and then develop, and then I'm gonna give you, what the conclusion of this. What does this mean for the next stage? And this was the first sign that this is changing. So we all remember about a couple of years ago, AI started becoming something that people realized is going to affect how we work. And one of these things that is happening as a result of AI entering the scene right now is that this reality and the data that we capture from reality is becoming machine readable. We're able to interpret that information and understand it. That used to be just an archive. And once you are able to turn video into a written description and then a data record in a database, then you can start to build workflows on top of it. That leads to new opportunities, and it's a whole new world out there, and we'll see some practical examples of this in a little bit. So let's establish this. Visibility was the first step, right? The next step is control, right? So instead of just asking, what can I see from the site? What is happening on the site? Control allows us to ask questions like, what can I change on site as a result of having that technology, right? How am I able to intervene better in what is happening, on site? But then there is another stage after that, which is optimization. And optimization is our ability to learn from all of the information that we've gathered, all of the actions that we've taken and recorded, and then change our workflows and behaviors over time. And what I'm talking about here, optimization, is not just in a single site. Well, that is applicable also cross-site learning, right? Taking information and learnings from one implementation and then taking it to the next project. So 3 stages. Visibility is number 1, control, and then optimization. Now, control is also a shift in itself. It's not just about controlling what's happening on site. Every time we take an action on site in response to something that we've captured, that action is recorded, meaning that we get additional context, not just what happened, but how we've responded to it, and then the new capture or the outcome of taking that action. Have information or have incidents dropped, have things improved, has this repeated again the next day, and that is compounded information or context. So you can think of this as 2 different loops. This is how I like to think of it. Control is a loop, right? And then optimization is a loop. And we start with intent. And our intent could be, for example, restricted zones, entry. So we have rules around who can enter which zone and when. And then we give this rule in a rule book or in a mandate to a construction site, and we say you have to follow this rule. This is our practice and this is how we work based on learnings from before. And then when we capture reality, we realize that there was an event, maybe proximity to heavy machinery, or somebody actually encroached on a zone that they weren't supposed to. But then we author that information, we record it, and that's the first step. So there is a very important step that happens after we take images and captures from a site, which is indexing that information and organizing it, making sure that our videos and information, our objects that are being detected are geo recorded, like we have, or geolocated. We know where they happened, we know what time they happened, and we call this the authoring step. And then there is actions taken on site once we have detected something and learned about it, and then there is an outcome that happens. We take that information, and we take that outcome, and then we look at reoccurrence. How many times has this happened? Is this still happening, or has it changed? And then we start changing the rules around how we work, and we come up with a new intent. That's control and optimization. So my argument here is that reality capture is not the new category. If you go back to what I was saying at the beginning, there were 2 categories in the last 25 years. And then 5 years ago, we thought reality capture was going to be the new category, much like design and then later construction management apps. No, reality capture is not the category, it's just the beginning. The category that is emerging right now in front of all of us is reality-driven intelligence. It is intelligence and action and learning, that is built and triggered by information that we gather from reality. So we set out in Evercam to structure this. We're building apps and we're building tools for the construction industry. And it's very important for us to think in terms of frameworks. What does that mean? What is reality-driven intelligence? Can we define it? How many layers does it have so that we can work around these? So this is the framework that we came up with. RDI, or reality-driven intelligence, is 5 layers. And it starts with reality capture. Your cameras, 360 sensors, all of that. The next layer is data authoring. Time-aligned, location-aware, indexed, organized evidence and data of what happened on site. Then the next layer is interpretation, using AI and modern tools to understand that data that we've stored and give it meaning. And then the next layer is action, building workflows, giving people tools on site so that they can respond to that new information that we got. And then the layer on top of the pyramid is command. How do we, have there been patterns that we can understand? Can we change how we work? Can we come up with new rules or coordinated response and action? So right now we're going from strong capture and a lot of ground truth information and data authored, and structured for interpretation, the emerging layer, which is interpretation, right? But then the next step is workflows and command and starting to affect what's happening on site. Now, each one of these layers has a job that it does. Capture, of course, like we said, creates visibility. Authoring creates context and information and structured data. Interpretation gives that data meaning, and then action is control, and command is learning and optimization. So here are the three layers. This is what's happening right now. And then I'm going to start showing you some examples of how we are responding to some of this. And some of these examples are going to be new and interesting and exciting, but not applicable tomorrow. And some of them are actually happening today. So I'm going to start with one that is actually being used at many of our sites today. So we've recently released a new feature called Smart Search. And Smart Search it's an impressive and just a genius piece of technology, which allows you to take from footage indexed elements that you can search in the same way that you would be searching in a database. So for example, I can come here and I can say, in this camera, for example, or in this view or in this site, what are the incidents between these dates when there was a backhoe loader, right? And then I can say, maybe I'm actually looking for incidents where there were a backhoe loader and a worker together in that same scene. And then I can start looking at these indexed images, right, of what happened. Here is another saved query that we can look at, which shows workers near a concrete pump between these dates. And then we can look at these exact moments as videos and see that happening. Now, this is not necessarily right now a control tool, right? This allows us to search, but what it shows is the ability to index all of these informations that we capture from video, create structured records, and then we can start building tools on top of that. Here is another example that is a bit more advanced. So we are now entering a phase when we're doing a lot of what we call scene analysis, right? Getting one scene and trying to make sense of what is happening and record information on that. So an example of this is, as you can see here, this is our gate tool, our gate report tool that monitors what is happening at a site gate for vehicles coming in and out. And initially, this is something that a lot of people, have seen before, where you have just ANPR, you're just able to detect a license plate from a vehicle. But we're going beyond that right now, where we have descriptions of what's happening. Like, for example, a Greek crane and heavy transport service provider based in Tripoli. So we're actually looking at who the contractor coming onto the site is. We're detecting that name based on that vehicle that is coming in and the information on it. And not just that, we're actually able to look up who that contractor is and what they're doing and what their job on site is. This leads to a lot of possibilities, because now we can start to match that with material delivery expectations or scheduling records. We know what's about to happen on site, right? We know what we're expecting to happen on site, and now we're actually seeing what is happening, and we're matching these records together. Here's another example that may be more interesting. So we are working on this tool. This is a research tool that we're using internally in Evercam, which is a safety analyzer for construction. And we are right now working to index a lot of information that we are getting from video feeds, right? And look for specific types of activities happening. So for example, I can search here for events where there were work at height. And then I can click and I can see in this image, as you can see, for example, we have people on a scaffold, right? Captured, identified. Of course, this is not happening where we have a camera positioned in a very specific spot looking at the scaffolds to understand it. This is much harder within these current conditions, but we're also trying to push the technology to figure out where is the maximum. Rolling this on site, it makes sense now that we start to become a lot more intentional with regards to how we position cameras or how we position capture tools, to be more intentional about that so that we can detect the things that we are interested in. There are a lot more examples that we can spend time looking at like this. So we have things, for example, like electrical installations. And then you can see pictures captured by AI and recorded and indexed for search like this, where you see people working with cabling. And of course, there's a lot more examples of that. And we can, for example, look at excavation and trenching. And if we look at this image, for example, then you can see an excavation activity happening right here. All of this is just, it's crazy, the world that we live in today and what's actually possible, that we're taking footage and video and then making sense of that and recording it. But here is one more, and please let me know if you cannot hear this audio. If you can hear it, we're all good.
Have there been any safety incidents on my site in the last week? I found multiple instances of heavy machinery, such as compact excavators and excavators, near workers over the last week. These findings may represent safety hazards. Would you like to view these results on the Smart Search page? Yes, please. I found several instances of compact excavators and excavators near workers over the last week, and these represent potential safety hazards. I've navigated you to the Smart Search page. Please check it out. Would you like further assistance with anything else? Please play the recordings from 1434.03. I've opened the recording for you at 1434.3. If you need further assistance or additional requests, feel free to let me know. Yes, turn that into a clip, please. Let me check that for you. Could you tell me how long you'd like the clip to be? A few minutes? Or up to the full hour? Just 30 seconds, please. Let me check that for you. The clip creation is now initiated. It will be available in the Media Hub shortly. If you need further assistance, let me know. Have there been any safety?
So as you can see, there's a lot of different ways you can then take that information, that structured information that we're creating, and then make sense of it. So this is the RDI stack, the reality-driven intelligence stack. This is the move from reality capture into interpretation and then action, and then hopefully command and cross-site learning, which is the next frontier. We also believe that not one company will own the whole RDI stack. We're working with partners, safety partners, construction management partners, companies that have more context, like what is happening in the schedule and what is expected, so that we can add more context on top of this reality and give it more meaning. If this is something that you're interested in, we're trying to look right now. We're looking for cases, people with specific conditions, and on how to use this and how to turn this into action that benefits you. So please reach out. Tell us what kind of control or control points would you like to have on your site? What are the biggest pain points, and how can this technology help you improve that? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Enes. Fair play to you. So reality-driven intelligence and visibility will start and the finish. Next up is Jenna Farrell and Mark Yo from Scopy on site, and their presentation title, "If it isn't recorded, it didn't happen," how AI is changing that. So Jenna, if you'd like to take it away.
Good thing. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us here. So yeah, our presentation is "If it isn't recorded, it didn't happen." And so today we're going to talk about the importance of records and how AI has become a good capture model for capturing issues as they happen in real time on site. So a little bit about us. My background is actually product design. I had a UI UX agency in Melbourne for 10 years, so that's user interface and user experience. Working on different software tools such as the Australian Election Management System, medtech software, and a lot of software in highly regulated environments, as well as software for major contractors. I'm really interested in human behavior and how software can work around existing human behaviors. I'll let Mark introduce himself there.
We do know. So, Chartered QS, predominantly on the back end of the project where, unfortunately or fortunately not, I've seen the downside in all of this great data not being notified on time or having an actual cause and effect, which ultimately leads to disputes in the construction industry. But fortunately, we're at a point now where we can gather that data and hopefully assist the parties in kind of reducing disputes, I guess. So I'm passionate about that in terms of risk mitigation up front and the tools around it. So even though some disputes still do happen, it's definitely a chance to minimize them. So I guess, in my experience from uh, the perspective of the site, the guys are always trying to do the right thing, right? We kept the crew moving, and then the QS claims or commercial person is going, where is it recorded? Is it linked to cost and time impacts? All of this data now we're looking at. Ultimately, we still have a contract to comply with. The timeframes are getting tighter in terms of, you have to notify within 3 days of becoming aware of the event. The awareness is getting sharper with the AI tools that we just seen by Evercam and these other tools, the WhatsApp groups. There's more data, more metadata, more information. So I guess when we looked at this tool, the problem really is trying to comply with the contractual timeframes with all of this increased data and complying with the strict obligations, and to mitigate ultimately erosion of margin for contractors and a level of comfort for the employers as well in terms of uh, how we deal with issues on the site, right? So, for example, this is a typical FIDIC, how the event starts. So say, for example, we have an Evercam footage, or we have a WhatsApp message or an email. The event, different contracts have different wording, but broadly speaking, is when you became aware of the event, okay? And the event may impact a critical path or disruption or a variation. This is a quite nice time frame. Within 28 days, you have to give the notice of claim. Within 42 days, you have to give your basis of claim, your extension of time, and other disruption, and your additional payment claimed been estimated. And then there's a flow on after that, right? In the PwC contract, for example, in Ireland, even if the equivalent to the engineer under the FIDIC contract doesn't respond, the contractor still has an obligation to respond back. And on all of these kind of nuances in the contract ultimately boil down to a simple flow chart. And if you comply with them, it's actually a lot easier for the employer to come to a final determination, because a lot of the employers now have third parties involved, private equity, there's more board approval and management around a lot of these things. So sometimes even public bodies, they can't actually sign off on these claims. So the process that we have, the more we comply with it, the better it is for all parties, I guess. But that gives you kind of a flavor of the typical workflow in contractual claims under construction projects.
So I guess why traditional software tools often struggle on site. So as I said, I've spent 10 years designing behavior-driven software for infrastructure industries. And I know that if the expectation is that site teams will simply enter better information, despite the operational pressures they are already managing throughout the day, then you're fighting human behavior and setting yourself up for failure. So we know the reality on site is busy teams will use what's quickest. Small issues might not always feel important at the time. And admin usually happens at the end of the day. They've been on their feet, rushed all day. And by the time they're doing the site diaries and logging the issues, a lot of the times those critical details can fade. And look, nobody on site wants to learn another software platform. And if we think about some of the tools that we're using, in these busy environments, we shouldn't have to be dealing with drop downs and pop-up windows and form fields. And then just from a personal angle, my own husband has worked on a lot of these big construction sites. So back in Melbourne when we were there working on the metro tunnel and projects like that. And so I just understand, the person, the site supervisor, coming home absolutely wrecked after being on their feet for 10 hours. And, the last thing they want to do at the end of the day is more admin. But unfortunately, that's the reality at the moment. But because of that, we're not capturing the complete data. And this is the risk that Mark is talking about. So then with every notice deadline, the risk starts compounding again. So how information breaks down across the project chain. So every time information is handed over, the information degrades the information further. So on site, the priority is delivery. Most admin happens retrospectively from memory. They're under pressure, context drops, sequences become unclear, and smaller impacts go unrecorded. Then it moves on to the QS and commercial teams, and the information becomes more about productivity, cost, program impact, entitlement, and contract risk. So with construction on tight margins, small gaps in information can have really large consequences. And that's the problem we want to solve. How can we capture that information as it happens on site, but with the lens of all the different lenses throughout the project chain? And this is where AI opportunity creates a different capture model. So the problem we're solving is, how do we create commercially robust and defensible records without relying on the site teams to have to think like a contracts administrator or a dispute specialist? How can we take, Mark's expertise and put it into the pocket of somebody on site? The information already exists on site. And also, just to note, this is not just about notices and claims, it's just about solid records, which can also be used for reporting and discussions and negotiations. So the challenge is capturing enough commercial information in real time before the context disappears. But how do we do that without forcing a behavior change? And that's working with the existing behavior. And we all know on site that WhatsApp is very heavily used. Everyone's on their WhatsApp all day. When I speak to site supervisors, they pull out their phone and there's hundreds of messages on a thread. I'm sure we're all very familiar with that. So how can we structure that information so that a supervisor can just leave a voice note, something like level 3 corridor, M&E clash above ceiling, LEDs delayed, waiting on a revised drawing. And then using AI to follow that up. When did it begin? How many workers are affected? Have you got any photos? And that results in structured records, time-stamped evidence, commercial visibility, and notice awareness. So I'm going to show you how that works in practice. So I'm just going to quickly jump to the demo screen here. So hopefully you guys can all see that okay. Okay, so this is a busy site supervisor, Tom Ryan. He's on a farmer project. He's opened his WhatsApp and he leaves a voice note to Scopy on his phone.
Locked access to CR1. Pro steel, haven't handed over the area. We are delayed by 5 hours. I've got 4 lads here.
So hopefully you guys all heard that okay? You heard the voice note? Great. Okay, so Tom's left a voice note just in his own, in his own way, in his own context. Scopy responds. It's already started turning this into a structured record. It's got a reference number. It understands the intent of what Tom is saying, understands, okay, this is a delay. It's given it a title. It's filled out, okay, I've got the cause, I've got the zone, I've got the responsible party, but we still need when, mitigation, is this ongoing or ended, who's affected, and do you have a photo? So super easy for Tom to see what else he needs to respond with. And he doesn't have to respond with everything, but whatever other information he has. So Tom responds with a photo and another voice note. And then Scopy has a lot more information. And the great thing is here that AI hasn't created the information. The AI has just prompted Tom and he's given more information in his own words as well, which is very important. And then what happens then is this voice note in this message thread turns into a structured record. So in Scopy, we can see that everything is time-stamped. We've got a summary of what happened, the rooms, the areas, organizations involved. We've filled out the form relevant for this category. So we've got cause, when, mitigation, ongoing, responsible party, workers affected, who's affected, and the zone, and any photos here as well. And because AI, does sometimes make mistakes, we've still got the whole conversation thread here, so people can come back in and listen to it as well. What that looks like is a dashboard which is full of the structured records. So these are all messages that have been converted into these records, where they've been given a category of information. So the person logging this didn't need to even give it a category. The AI just understands the intent. And at a glance, we can see the location, party affected, party responsible, workers, and hours. As Ez was saying before, it's like, it's one thing now just to, it's great to capture the information, but then what are you going to do with it? So what happens is Scopy understands the construction contract as well. So when you set up your project, you also upload the construction contract. And in real time, Scopy is analyzing all these records that are coming in against the contract. And if something looks like it warrants early notice or some type of protective notice, Scopy will draft the notice, reference the correct clauses, and turn that event into a notice. And this is emailed directly to the team's QS for review and editing. And it's up to them if they send it or not. For other events which might not need a notice, but they are all related, Scopy will group those into a matter. So, oh, there's just one in there, but yeah, so yeah, a matter is like a container for an event. So for example, you might have a subcontractor that's caused a bunch of issues. So you might want to group all those issues into one container, or you've got an event which was the root cause and has a lot of knock-on effects. So Scopy will group all those related events into a matter for you. And another thing we know is site diaries are a real pain for people at the end of the day. So Scopy automates that process as well by putting all the records of what happened that day into a site diary without anyone having to do anything. All the photos, so you can open up the photos. The photos are all time-stamped with the time, who created them, the location, and description as well. So I'll just jump back into the presentation now. I'll hand it over to Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. And I suppose just on that as well, it's, you've all this information and ultimately you have a project program and a cost code structure. So the categories there that Jenna showed you, it's making sure that the data is in a reasonable fashion to demonstrate what's called the cause and effect of your claim. So even though it's a minor delay on site, as Jenna said, it starts off as a minor delay, but the minor delay may gradually increase into a large delay and impact critical path, and has, as Jenna said, maybe ripple effects. So what does that do? Like, what does it change? Look, in my experience is most, like in employers and contractors and a lot of PMOs on the larger contracts, for example, Heathrow expansion, massive project, where people are genuinely trying to get the issues out early, that they can resolve the issues rather than letting it linger, right? And if we can gather that information now with the benefit of AI and all the other products, we can articulate these issues, and there may be many, into the right people to resolve the issues in a timely fashion, right? But the harsh reality at the moment is the commercial consequences of not doing that is, as pointed out there, the notice obligations aren't met. There's a standing waiting time for the guys on site that they're waiting on a direction or decision. There's program impacts. There's the entitlement of your claim is actually eroded because you haven't satisfied the condition precedents. And the parties or the contractor might have to proceed with the works, and then at a later date you get a determination to say in any event your time barred, but you've incurred the cost, which is obviously not a position where you want to be, right? So and then all the rest of the ongoing business disruption and dispute cost that goes with it. So it's amazing these little small things, if they're identified earlier, the better records. We have a real opportunity in the industry to start shifting our position in our digital standing across other industries. So it's exciting. You know, we're genuinely excited about this.
And just a few snapshots from how Scopey's worked in practice on some real life projects. So one of our kind of early pilot customers, in 50 working days, the site team, which was about probably 4 or 5 of the supervisors using Scopey, logged 70 issues in real time by using WhatsApp. And Scopey drafted 22 contractual notices. And their QS on the project said site teams captured 75 to 85% more information than we usually do on projects. And because it was using voice notes and WhatsApp, they had a lot more context behind the issues too, which is great. And I think that's really important. If you think about if you have to fill out a form field compared to leaving a voice note, you're going to get a lot more information and detail when you are using a voice note.
Sorry, Jenna, just on that specific example as well. So there's two things, like the commercial director in that instance just had a Teams meeting with the other employer. They resolved, I think, 16 out of 22 issues. And then there was another issue with the subcontractor. That was another phone call, a long-term relationship. But at least they knew what the issues were. You know what I mean? I think that was the real lessons learned from it, Jenna, wasn't it? That we could actively see that the issues were being resolved within a rapid time frame, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not all about just sending out a bunch of notices. It's just knowing what the issues are. And, a lot of those first notices are just a heads up anyway. The client actually wants to know what's going on as well if there's any issues. And so from some other projects, we found onboarding has been super easy. And we know that adoption in the construction industry can be a big barrier to new software on site. But we've had teams that even have, we're actually driving to the site to give them a demo, and they were using it before we even managed to get there. So I think that's very important with, AI adoption in construction projects as well. And then we have other clients who aren't even using it for notices at all. They just wanted a consistent way for their site teams to capture information. And they're just using it for that without the contractual intelligence as well. So one thing we learned very quickly from early AI deployment in construction is that responsible adoption has to fit into how people already operate. And the first thing is AI cannot create more admin. Like, it's great we're capturing all this new data and more data, but if you don't do something with it, then that's just a bunch more admin for someone if you're just giving them, all this extra data. The second lesson is behavior matters more than features. So construction teams will naturally default to whatever's fastest under pressure. And that's why people still rely so heavily on phone calls, WhatsApp, Excel spreadsheets. Not because they're the perfect systems, but because they're familiar and they're quick. We also believe AI should support judgment, not replace it, especially in construction. So AI should help surface issues earlier, structure and produce information, but the human in the loop is still definitely needed. And finally, AI should help teams act, not just capture. So we're generating all this data and information. We can't just present more information. We actually have to do something. So AI should be triggering workflows, producing work, but for a human to review. So ultimately, the best AI systems in construction will probably feel less like software, and more like operational support running quietly in the background. So thanks for listening to our presentation. Feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn there. And I'm happy to jump on a demo and tell you more information as well.
Jenna, thank you very much. And Mark, thank you very much for that presentation. It was great to see the expensive divide, I think, Mark, as you put it, between the delivery and the commercial teams, but also the value of recording at the time, as I suppose memory lapses over time. And just your last slide there, Jenna, AI cannot create more admin. I've had many a row with Claude and Copilot and ChatGPT about that, so it's a nice one to have there. So just in terms of wrapping up, CitA have a number of courses that or they have funding available for a number of courses, some of which are on the screen here. If you have an interest in any of these, please reach out to the CitA SkillNets team and they can talk you through the funding and the eligibility on it. There's plenty of courses available there, so do reach out. Also, SkillNet MMC Accelerate Initiative. It's a partnership between SkillNet Ireland and CitA, and it supports the adoption and growth of modern methods of construction through a dedicated government-funded platform. So this offers training pathways, industry insights, research events and supports. So we'd just like to highlight the next event, Extreme Balconies in Clane, County Kildare, 24th of June. If you want to scan the code on the screen there, that will give you the details of the event. And again, if you want to get involved in this initiative, please reach out to the CitA team and they'll be happy to assist. A sneak preview of the next event in the Intleacht series, event number 5, and it's just a date for your diary, the 25th of June. Again, same time, 12 o'clock to 1. AI, MMC and automation from design to delivery. So keep that one on your list there. And then I think just in terms of wrapping up again, I'd just like to thank the speakers, the sponsors, the collaborators, everybody that participated today in the Q&A. We've heard some very clear and concise messages and some very good presentations today. So I would like to thank everybody who participated. Enjoy the rest of the evening and slán go fóill.